Welcome back to the Witch's Way podcast. I'm Kat.
And I'm Jamie. And tonight we are diving into a topic of a goddess and a zodiac sign. You guys know all year long we've been trying to bring you a new goddess that you might not have heard of to work with and giving you a relevant place, which is within the zodiac sign, to work with her. And today's goddess is a name that I'm not really comfortable with, but her name is Isis. She's an Egyptian goddess, and her Egyptian name could be Aset. It's just A-S-E-T. Aset, but the goddess Isis is very well known, and there's a lot of stuff on the internet to look her up, but be sure to put goddess in front of it. I don't know, my Google, when I was doing things, it knew, it was it didn't lead me to the
terrorist organization.
Yeah, whatever. It's no. But her name means she of the throne. So I liked that. I wanted to kind of keep that. But yes, you could call her Isis or Aset. Either one is fine. But in tonight's podcast, we are going to be calling her Aset, and Isis, and we are working with her in Cancer season, and we're going to tell you why this is a good time to work with her during this season. First, I wanted to describe her to you, so I put a picture in here like I do with the goddesses, right?
You did, and you're right. She's not super attractive.
What?
Or her image.
I said that?
Well, she has a weird thing on top of her head. I mean, I guess.
Okay, people don't understand what that is. Her imagery is the goddess, the Egyptian goddess that you always see kind of knelt with her arms out that have the feathers like wings, like she's wearing a wing cape, sort of.
Yeah.
It's who I was for Samhain a couple of years ago.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
That is because she turns into a falcon or a kite, a hawk, whatever you want to call it. She's a raptor. So she can change shapes, or shift shaper. What am I saying? Shift shaper? Is that right?
Shape. Yeah. I think
shapeshifter?
So, yeah.
No, I think it's the other way.
Okay.
Anyway.
We're dyslexic. We don't know.
Remember. Yeah, but she's very well known, and they make a lot of statues of her. So you can readily get imagery and statues of her, of that image specifically with her kneeling. And the thing on top of her head, just so you know, as she got adopted into different cultures, she became goddess of the harvest. And when she came into the Greek culture, she was Demeter. So all these things, the horns are holding up a sun disk. Okay, so that's what you see on top of her head. That thing on her head.
Yeah, it's just an odd thing.
It's an odd
looking thing.
You should see the one that shows her as it's a crown, and it looks like a Tetris piece. It's really ugly. That's actually ugly. This one is not bad. The Tetris piece one is not the best.
Okay.
But she is known as the Queen of Heaven or the Mother of all gods. I liked all her little names. She has so many of them because she was relevant for 3,000 years. And then sort of died down when Christianity, became popular in the 600s, and then they got back into it, especially when people started exploring Egypt again. So the first part that we're going to talk about, of course, is who is Isis, which I know I just kind of gave a rundown on it. I want you guys to know that I went down so many rabbit holes researching her.
After rabbit hole.
I spent an entire day.
She was like Alice in Wonderland.
I couldn't help myself. It was so interesting. Because in order to start understanding who Isis was, has been, and still is today, you got to go way back in time, 4,500 years ago. And she's from ancient Egypt, in their creation story, where there was, the sun god Ra. Okay, then 2 other gods were created, and that was the god of sky and earth. And then they had children, and they had 2 boys and 2 girls. So she had, and this is another famous thing. It's very odd, but she married her brother, and the other brother sister they married. So
they all did that stuff.
But again, this is where I got into rabbit holes where I really questioned. I was like, did they though? Was it really their brother, or was the mistranslation? So I'm not going to take it as incest.
It was a common thing though for them to.
But we don't truly know,
especially in wealthy families or
high up royalty.
Yeah, royalty. I mean,
I did read that they did that so that they could keep all the things. It was trustworthiness and keep the wealth.
Kings, mad kings and stuff. Mad king
just
disease.
Look at Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
King Joffrey. What a great example of that.
Uh-huh.
So I already told you her Egyptian name is Aset, spelled A-S-E-T. And her story was really important to the Greek and Romans when they came in and, when Egypt had its fall, and then Cleopatra sort of took on this Isis type character. And so every goddess was her when it came to that. She was the one that's why she's called the mother of goddesses. because her imagery, which is still used today, and again, maybe sort of controversial, but they didn't have imagery for Christianity. So what they had was ancient Egyptian sculptures, and they took this image of Isis feeding her child Horus, which is basically like her always with her boobs exposed because that was like life, right? Boobs are life. And a grown man child. It's the size of a baby on her lap, but it's like a man. It's a fully grown person. And she's just like with him, like breast exposed, like, yep, this is what I do. I give life to kings and queens and whatever. So they used that same imagery for Mary and Jesus. Yeah. Did you know that?
No,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well, because imagery wasn't big back
those
then, right?
Christians were always stealing from everybody else.
Well, let's just say they weren't original in their ideas.
They weren't original in their ideas. They took
original.
stuff from other people and changed it around and then claimed it as their own.
Yeah. So because of her influence, she was a really easy goddess to accept into the pantheons within Greek and Roman, the pantheons there. And these are some of the names that she's been, like the goddess of that she's been associated with. So she's the goddess of magic, the goddess of motherhood, the goddess of healing, and the goddess of rebirth.
Yeah.
I love all
She
those
sounds
things.
like, yeah.
You can see how that would play in with Cancer, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, and just even, your practice, because it's all about her. And it's all about,
it is.
It's all about women.
Life-giving and yeah, definitely. So there was actually a cult formed around her, and they use the word cult, and I'm hoping that that's loosely, but it was a priesthood, and priests were in it as well. So it was men and women that worshipped her, but it went on for over 1,000 years. Like the last temple of Isis just closed in the 560s AD. It wasn't that long ago, and it's still standing. I just don't know how to say the name of the town where it stands at. Easily searchable online. But again, that's why I say her influence as Isis has just been so strong for so long. I didn't want to change her name for this podcast.
Yeah.
So I didn't.
Even though Isis has gotten
that name in the last
20 years,
not great.
25 years or so. Yeah.
Well, so I want to tell you one of her most famous stories, sort of how she's popular in mythology. Her and her brother Osiris were married, and they had a younger brother and sister, and so they were married. And of course, one of them is it reminds me of Loki, but he's the trickster, the troublemaker, the jealous one, always causing problems. And his name was Set, just S-E-T, Set. And he was supposedly jealous of his brother and decided he would try to kill him. He was going to plot to kill him. So there's two ways that he dies, and in both ways we get to see how Isis can use her magic to find him and the connection that they had, because in the stories, there was a lot of love and reverence for each other. It wasn't like a brother-sister, we had to marry each other thing. Like they really loved each other. That's part of the story, is to have this great love that goes beyond death. So Set decides he's going to throw a party. He invites everybody to it, and he basically tricks his brother. Is like, look, I made this grand, beautiful jewel box. Some people call it a coffin. It's a box, a very decorative, elaborate box. And he's like, anybody in the party can get in it, and if you fit in it, you win. Like, you get to keep the box. Trickster. So of course, people tried it. They didn't fit. When Osiris got in the box, he fit, and Set immediately sealed up the box and threw it in the Nile River. And Osiris drowned, but the box floated down to a tree, got stuck in the reeds in a tree. And this was actually in Lebanon, which I also find that interesting. I couldn't get into all the stories of how these things connect, and I know that there's purpose behind them. But because because Osiris's body in the box floated to this tree, the tree actually grew around the box overnight. So the king of that kingdom where it landed in Lebanon, he cut down the tree and was like, oh, this must be a magical tree. I'm going to make it a pillar and put it in my courtyard at my castle. Well, Isis, obviously being deeply upset that she lost her beloved, went flying around in her form as a kite, as a hawk, looking for Osiris. She saw the column, and she just felt his presence there, knew that he was going to be there, and didn't just go in with all her might and be like, give me the fucking column. It's mine. It's got my dead lover in it. But befriended the king and became part of the kingdom for a little bit in order to ask favor to get the column. And then she set Osiris free. And in that way, she sort of brought him back to life for 1 minute so he could impregnate her. So we'll move on to the second way he was killed, which is also a very famous story. See, I didn't know the tree one, but I know this next one. So Loki decided to spear his brother. So he put a spear through him. Who else got a spear through them? Just saying. And so he killed Osiris and then cut his body up into 14 pieces. This is a very exact number. And that's because back then the lunar calendar was 28 days and it takes a cycle. So you're either in the growing phase or you're in the waning, right? So you got waxing and waning. So I figured that that represented the waning phase, the 14 pieces that he cut his brother up into is like 14 days to be like nothing, to start new again. So the 14 pieces got distributed all over Egypt. And again, Isis had to fly around as a hawk and find all the pieces of her husband. You know what? There was one piece missing that she could not find because it was eaten by a fish. A fish. We all know that Christianity, the symbol for Christianity is a fish. Okay. She did not get his penis back, but somehow still magically made a baby with him. Virgin Mary, never having sick. Yeah, so like there's all of these things, you guys, when you get into the mythologies and how so many of them overlap in these stories, it is just so fucking interesting. As you can tell, I'm very excited about it because as I learned it, I was just like, oh, I see that. I see what's going on there. I know what you did. Like when you know the other stories. So of this union between brother and sister, Isis stayed on the earth as like a living being up here, and Osiris, because he could never be made fully whole again, he ruled the underworld. So this is sort of there's a connection there to the Demeter and the Persephone story where, you know, each spring, Persephone would come back and be the goddess of spring, and then she was queen of the underworld. So there's just more of this like play into, you could see how the Romans and the Greeks adapted the story into their own sort of thinking about it. There's all this influence from each other. Like, I guess after the first stories were told, nobody got more creative. They just kept sort of retelling the same stories and replacing the names. So the biggest part about Isis is that her magic was so strong that she could bring her husband back from the dead. And that is why she's known as the goddess of magic. She's also associated with the Book of the Dead, which is really spells and words that speak to bring things to fruition, to life. And so this connects with manifestation and like nothing dreary and drab and dead. It's actually more about creation of life. And that's what her magic is known to. Her words were so powerful. And they said that like in order to breathe life back into Osiris, her husband, she beat her wings. And like her and her sister, they would, when in their hawk form, would beat their wings to like push breath and life into the body of the dead. So very interesting stuff. That is her special magical power, is to bring people back from the dead, to have love so strong that you can tell where your beloved might be lying, even if he's in 14 pieces, and like bring him back together. All but his penis. Oh, sad penis.
Okay, so is that the end of the story of
Those are my two stories, yeah. Okay. Do you have any questions? Like, is there anything that's not clear? Because I went very fast.
You did go very fast.
I know. I'm so excited.
I know. I love your excitement.
Sorry. But also it's distracting because you're like, wait, what happened?
No, I think it's really interesting. And she sounds like she could be a really good goddess if you're looking for a goddess, especially for Cancer season, which we're getting ready to.
Yeah, because it's that motherhood. It's like the reviving. It's I would almost even say sacrificing. Like when she had to turn into different forms to go out and find the love and like to bring her family back together in order to create a child.
She transformed.
She transformed, which is motherhood, right? When we become mothers, we transform.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it. Even if you're just a dog mom, still, it transforms your life because now your only goal is like that pup or that kitten or whoever.
And you love them just like a human.
You do. Baby. And sometimes more. They get away with way more shit than humans ever do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because your pup, he gets excited and pees and you're like, oh, did you pee on the bed? Like if your grown 5-year-old did that, you'd be like, what the fuck is wrong? Why are you still doing this? So like actually cat moms and dog moms, they get away with your animals get away with way more. Yeah. It's not bad either. You know what? It's not bad. I support that.
Let's talk about what makes Isis special. She's a bridge between heaven and earth, deeply tied to renewal, protection, and sacred knowledge.
Yeah, because the Book of the Dead is sacred knowledge.
The Book of the Dead is sacred knowledge. Her worship lasted 1,000 years, surviving long after many other deities were forgotten.
Yeah. So like of all the deities that they had throughout Egyptian rule, Isis is still like very prevalent. I'm telling you, you go into any shop in any Egyptian, if they have any Egyptian section, you're going to find Isis there. She's always there. Yeah.
Her magical correspondences are her colors: deep blue, gold, white, and black.
Yes.
Crystals: lapis lazuli, one of my favorites, moonstone, and obsidian.
Can I tell you something about lapis lazuli?
Yeah.
That's what they ground down to make the blue makeup. When you see them having blue on them, that was how they made the makeup, was ground down lapis lazuli.
I love that stone.
I love that color. Beautiful color.
I know. That's what always drew me to it. See, animals that correspond with Isis: hawks, because she has the wings.
Yep, she transforms herself into a
snakes,
kite. Yeah.
and black-winged birds.
Yeah.
Symbols: the throne,
An
ankh,
yeah.
which is what?
So the ankh looks like, the bottom part looks like a cross, sort of like 3 pieces of a cross, but then it has a circle piece up top. Like you often see it. So instead of a cross where it's like the 4,
oh yeah,
it's a circle up top. Not quite a circle, more like an upside down teardrop shape.
Yeah. I think I know what
so
you're talking about.
So the ankh is the symbol of life. That's why they always see it. It's like like your essence, your life. Yeah.
Wings and stars.
Yeah. I would definitely think feathers. Like for me, knowing her story, feathers would tell me that if I'm working with Isis and I found feathers places, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's from her. That's how I would see that.
The element: water and air.
Yes.
Modern worship: honored in the goddess circles, Kemetic, Egyptian reconstructionist traditions, modern witchcraft practices, and feminist spiritual paths.
Yeah, definitely, because she was more important than her male counterpart, right? Like, I'm sure Osiris has stories. I didn't see any of them. Like, he just was there.
We're about the goddesses.
Yeah, I mean, the goddess is the one who lived on. She made the magic. She, like, continued on the line because she was able to get pregnant from him.
Well, I mean, we're goddesses, and we're the only reason why there's even life on Earth.
Yeah.
Because without us, wouldn't be here.
There wouldn't be a thing.
No.
So now that we've called in the mother of magic, let's ride the tide. And oh my gosh. Okay, let me reread that. Sorry. My brain is still hopping on like all of the Isis stories. Okay. So now that we've called in the mother of all magic, let's ride the tides into the emotional, intuitive waters of Cancer season. And we'll explore why this is the perfect time to work with Isis.
All right. Cancer season themes.
Yeah.
Cancer is a water sign ruled by the moon, making this a time for emotional healing, intuition, family, home, and self-nurturing.
Definitely.
This season invites us to slow down and tend to our inner child and our inner waters.
I think it's harder for us to listen to that stuff, especially during summer where we get really busy and we're always out and about and doing and doing and doing.
Yeah, if you can't spend, I get to do this because I live, alone except for Tank and Cameron.
Yeah.
But mostly. So I have a lot of time that I can spend alone. Yeah. And if you don't get that, then you can't really get into those, it's harder to like reach those areas of you where you're, in your deep emotions or just your healing emotions.
Or even thinking about it. Because it's almost like you need time away from people and you're detoxing from all of that. Then you have to let your mind get into that space.
Yeah.
And then be there for a while and not be interrupted. Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely harder to do.
When you have, if you have a lot of people in your life, if you live in a big house with a lot of people, you're always on the go. It's definitely harder to find that time to do that. But it's really important for your mental well-being and your practice. I think
it's downtime, that mental downtime.
Yeah.
Because even though it's downtime, like away from processing people, we have to give ourselves time to process what's internal rather than just what's going on every day with the people around us. It's like, well, when do we do that for us?
Right.
When do we turn it inward?
Yeah.
So with Isis and Cancer, there's sort of this mirrored things about them. Both they're moon aligned because her being a goddess is going to connect with the moon, which wasn't necessarily her Egyptian story. That came when she got rolled into the Roman and Greek pantheons. And then even for today as a goddess, like people sort of saw that sun disk and thought it was a moon. They didn't understand the imagery way back then.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both moon aligned. They're both nurturing extremely nurturing, fiercely protective, and then also deeply intuitive. That's why the story with her husband being in the pillar, she like intuitively knew, sensed him in there, even though she couldn't see him, which is very, in connection with cancers. That's sort of their thing. Also, sacred floodwaters. And when we think about just the waters of our body, do you remember how much we are? 65% water?
Is that
like
I
liquid?
thought it was more than that. Is it just 65?
65,
it was like
70?
80.
No, we're not
okay.
We're not that much water. We got a lot of other density
Sure?
going on. I guess it depends on where you are in your health journey. Could be. Yeah. So the fact that when we look at goddesses and we look at how the moon really can have this pull on water, on plants, on everything, on our emotions. The interesting thing about Isis is that the star Sirius, which is, if you all know Orion, I feel like that's a very well-known constellation.
Yeah,
but Orion is the one with the three stars
and
it's the belt.
The belt.
So Orion's belt.
And he's always in the sky at an angle, so at least here.
Yes.
I don't know if it's that way everywhere, but he's always like on his side, almost on his side.
Yeah, he doesn't go head to toe over us. He goes like he's on his side, like
goes kind of
he's
sideways.
a lizard on a screen hanging on. Yeah. Well, Sirius is said to be like her embodiment. So they don't have like the Egyptians didn't have a word for soul, but they had a word for energy. And so that's what they felt. Sirius, the star, was like her essence outside of herself. And they would look to the night sky and wait for Isis, the star, which is Sirius to us, to rise, because that actually indicated that the Nile was going to start flooding, and that was the sacred floodwaters, because the Nile flooding brought in the nutrients to the soil that would allow the harvest to grow later. Mm-hmm. So that is the water connection. And of course, when was this season? When did Sirius come up? During Cancer season. Mm-hmm. So it literally, like in the past, would have connected to the same time frame as well. So they were closely associated with like the life-giving and nurturing part of the goddess, the flood rivers, the star rises, and then we get a bunch of crops for good food. Yeah. So they're also, what they share is like divine mother archetypes. So if you've ever tried to find a divine mother archetype, which I know when we did our healing the mother wound, that would be another, any of the goddesses probably, but her for sure would be a good one to work with. Isis is said to be the mother of the gods, and Cancer, I made this label and Kat corrected me, it's not quite right, but I would consider Cancer like the mother of the zodiac, but more the mother sign of the zodiac, not the mother of the zodiac, because that's...
Well, the interesting thing, so there is a natal chart, a mythological natal chart for the birth of the world called the Thema Mundi. And on the rising is Cancer. Cancer is rising, and that mythological
I did not know that.
Birth chart. Yeah.
And our rising basically is like who you are.
Yeah, that's your
everyday mode of operation.
Yeah, that's how you present
not
yourself
your sun sign.
That's how you present yourself to the world. And it's like when you walk out the door, your rising sign is like who you are when you walk out your front door and show yourself to the world.
Do you remember what the sun sign would have been for that chart? Would there have been one?
The sun
for that.
I think it was Leo for the Thema. Yeah, because then after Cancer, then it goes in order of the zodiac. So it's Cancer, then Leo, then Virgo, so on.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think that's it. I might have to go back to my studies, my Hellenistic astrology studies. Right. But yeah, Cancer is the rising.
For like the start of our world.
Yeah.
It's super interesting.
Yeah.
The next way that they really relate is that they both have protective powers. And I put beneath softness, but that's not what I was thinking at all. I was thinking like the crab, the hard and then the soft underneath the shell. So I think I wrote that wrong. But Isis is just not tender. She's powerful and cunning and unrelenting when she's protecting her children or the truth. So I think of that
sounds like a mother.
Yeah. I mean, that's why she's the goddess. She's the mother of the gods. And then Cancer is often misunderstood as being emotional, air quotes, emotional. But the symbol being the crab, it has that hard outer shell and then a soft heart and claws to defend what matters. So I guess that's where you could really see that. And I don't know if I wrote it in here. Maybe I did, but I learned then, you guys, I had to do a deep fucking dive into Cancer and Cancer and the sign and why is it a crab and what does the 69 mean? And it doesn't. That is just happenstance that it looks like a 6 and a 9. It's actually supposed to be crab claws curled, but I think that's the next part. So they both show, I'm just going to say, they both show that softness is not a weakness. It's a very sacred strength to be able to have both. Yeah. So your emotions do not make
hard
you
on
weak.
The outside, soft on the inside.
Yes, that doesn't make you weak to have all that emotion, to have all of that passion for the things that you love and you care about. Yeah.
All right. So history and symbolism of Cancer. The symbol, the crab, is from the Greek myth of
Karkinos.
Karkinos, thank you.
Yes, Karkinos.
Who tried to help Hydra in its battle with Hercules, a small but loyal protector.
Yeah.
The word Cancer means crab in Latin.
It does.
But the symbol for has always been a
so the symbol before. Sorry, I didn't write that well. A scarab beetle.
Beetle,
the Egyptian little beetle.
Yeah,
that everybody loves. They're so cute.
They are so cute, and there's a really fun slot machine that has those in it.
Oh,
it's so
Lord.
Cute. That I used to play that I used to have fun with because I was like, oh, the beetle, the beetle was on there when you got the beetle. I was like, you scored really high or something, or earned whatever. I don't know, but I remember that beetle. I was like, that's a cool beetle.
Yeah. So what I learned about Cancer is that the symbol for it had not always been a crab, but had been a scarab beetle, the turtle, and then a crayfish or a
lobster. Yeah.
Yep.
So let's see.
They think of these creatures as when it was portrayed in old times before the tarot cards and all the imagery that we have now. Oh, I didn't even say about the moon card, but the imagery of the scarab beetle was it would push the sun across the sky because it was pushing it from solstice. And so it marked the beginning of the solstice season. Yeah. So that was interesting to me. So
speaking of the moon tarot card, if you think of that, you remember the little animal that looks like it's emerging, that's emerging from the water. Yeah. And it's supposed to be a crab, but it actually looks more like a lobster. So I think you said that the word Cancer was not a crab, but it meant like a crustacean.
Back in the day, yeah.
A crustacean.
It wasn't necessarily the word Cancer. That crab and Cancer got put together when they were taking tumors out of people, because the tumors, when you would extract them from a body, and they didn't, when I was reading it, I was like, I don't know if these people were dead or alive when they were doing this. Way back in the day when science was really creepy. When they would pull the tumors out, it would have little tentacle things off of it. And often that's what they described it looking like, was like a blob with legs and things hanging off it. So I guess it looked like a crab to them. And that's how crab and Cancer became associated, way back, I don't know, 800s, 1200s, something like that.
So Cancer is also associated with the womb, ocean, ancestral memory, all the realms Isis rules over. So which what makes them a great combination.
Yes.
So now that we see the sacred threads weaving Isis and Cancer together, let's talk about how you can work with her energy in simple, soulful practices.
And I didn't do a ton of practices for this because I think that when you choose to work with a goddess like this, it becomes very personal. You know exactly what you're doing. You can look things up and get lots of your own ideas. But I did put together 3.
Okay.
I put together 3. Okay. So I've never heard anybody say this before, but I called it star bathing. Moon bathing, sure. But to be with the stars, because we pointed out that Sirius is the star that was very close, that was her essence in the sky. Learn to sit with the stars. It's not about where the moon is at in its phase, but just watching the stars go overhead. Just that to me is amazing. You've where they have a camera that's fixed and the earth, the sky
they
moves,
watch, yes.
I can't explain what I'm trying. But you can literally see the Milky Way galaxy across the sky.
Yeah, that watches the night sky. A camera that's set on timed camera. So
time lapse kind of thing.
Yeah, so it records the whole night, and then they fast forward it, and you see how the the whole night sky changes
Yeah.
as it moves across.
It moves
Yeah,
across.
it's very cool. I love
So
that.
I called it star bathing. I don't know if that's a real thing. I just made it
It
up.
is now.
It is now. It's official. So make time to just sit with the night sky. And if you can find Sirius in the sky, awesome. And know that, like, what I think about when I look at that is like people for thousands of years, probably, I don't know, millions maybe, but the way that the stars have just been above the earth for so long, all of our ancestors, like the people who used to worship Isis and all of the gods and like the Egyptian rulers, just going back and back and back and back, they all looked at these same stars. So sometimes when I'm sitting there underneath of it, and I think that with the moon too, but it's like,
Yeah,
they built things from watching the constellations go across the sky.
they
tracking
did. They
time
made
and,
decisions.
like,
They made decisions. They, you know,
Yeah.
astrology started in 200 BCE or something like that.
Yeah.
And you know, so you had people. They didn't have anything else to do. I mean, life was pretty
there wasn't
simple.
electricity. You weren't sitting in your house with the lights
there
on.
wasn't electricity, and the only really things they had to do is like survive, right? So grow food,
observe and survive,
and you know, make clothes and stuff. Everything was very manual, but you had people with a lot of time, especially men, because you know the women were doing all the fucking work.
Oh Lord!
So the men were out there.
Passion with that statement.
You know it's true.
Maybe.
Please, did you ever see a man down by the water washing out clothes? No, you did not. It was always the women and taking care of the children and all that. But anyway,
what were they fucking doing? Where were they?
They were out looking at stars,
and
they were like, "I'm going to be an astrologer, and I'm going to get paid by the king."
Oh, so they were the first witches then? They were
they were well, they were out watching the sky and writing things down and looking at their respective villages or towns or wherever they lived, you know, communities that they lived in, for things that happened in their communities, and then some correlation between what was in the sky, and what was up in the stars, what was happening in the stars, and what was happening here on Earth. We talked about that in a recent episode.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. So
and we still do that now.
So the whole star thing is like, I almost like the stars more than I even like the moon, and I love the moon. But the stars, especially if you can get out where it's dark and get away from the city lights, oh my God,
yeah,
it's beautiful.
Do you remember
us? Do you remember us? You remember riding in the back of the truck up in Joshua Tree?
Yeah,
we lived in California, and she was little.
Yeah,
and up in the mountains. Desert mountains, so the mountains up above the desert, you're really high up.
Yeah, and it looks so close.
And it looks like you could just reach out and pull the stars down out of the sky. That's how close it looks.
Do you know the only other place I've been that was like that is Afghanistan?
Really?
Because where my base was in Afghanistan, we were really high up in the mountains. And I remember us having a supermoon. I remember the world having a supermoon, and I was like there when it happened. And I'm telling you, it just looked so close. You're like, this is not real. It just didn't feel real. Like, this doesn't happen, you know? And the stars there, man, I saw the biggest meteorite also blaze through the sky there. That was just a fireball. It was so wild. You just feel so close to it all. Yeah, being up that high. Absolutely beautiful.
So Sirius is in our night sky, currently in the northern hemisphere.
Yep.
And it's the star that is believed to embody Isis in the sky. And to find it, look at Orion's belt, the 3 stars in a row that follow them down, and they point directly to Osiris.
Yeah.
Sirius, I'm sorry.
That's okay, because it's Osiris was her husband. Look, all of the Isses. So it's a really bright star. Like, you're not looking for a little bloop. No, it's a bright star directly under Orion's belt. Like, follow the 3 stars and then boom, right there.
And so, of course, you know, that's been important to women in the past as a symbol of the Divine Mother.
Oh, yes.
And they even built temples that face the direction of the star to honor her.
Yeah. I love that. It's like, so that they could watch the rising of it. Like, that was where they set everything up to just be viewed, like, in to honor her. And like, yep, we face all of our buildings towards her, wherever she's going to be. So the next, so star bathing. Yes, go out and star bathe and find Sirius and like, yes, do some of that. The next is just to create like a simple Isis altar, or, you know, a honoring the mother altar. But I would start by getting imagery of her. And I definitely looked this up because I'm like, I don't have imagery of her. I have a picture, but I haven't printed it. I've never made one for Isis. I learned a lot about the goddess doing this podcast. But I found out on Amazon, you can get like little statues for $12 if you really wanted to have like a dedicated temple to her. And I know one of our very good mutual friends has her in her bedroom.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
I don't know who it is. Our friend over here?
No.
Oh, okay.
Our friend, she lives closer in Bradenton.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I thought you might
make the connection.
Yeah. But I don't know. I've always loved Egyptian stuff anyways. So yeah, anytime I see it, I'm like, ooh, it just seems
so
meaningful.
Get a representation.
Her. Yeah. Statue, picture, whatever. Or you don't have to have her specifically. You could write her name down on a piece of paper too.
Yeah.
Making it simple. Include things like blue candles. Remember the associations were the blue, gold, white,
and black.
Water, of course, bowls of water. I don't know. I would even do like plants or soil because she was known for like making the fertile soil as well. Anything that is a fertility item for you, whatever that means. I know I think of eggs, but it's like that's not not the season for it. And then put lapis lazuli or moonstone, anything that feels motherly or goddess-like for you. Do you have a lot of lapis lazuli?
I don't. No.
Do you know that that's what I put my dad's ashes in whenever I take him places to like?
Oh.
Yeah, I have from Afghanistan. I have these little lapis lazuli bowls that like has a lid, and it's all lapis. Because lapis lazuli is mined in Afghanistan heavily. It's mined in other places too, but like it's huge there. So they have a lot of jewelry and things that are lapis lazuli. And then, so when you make an altar and you put your things together, you do little offerings. And so you can have this up for like the whole Cancer season. Somebody, when a suggestion came through, they were like, add milk. I was like, oh, how's that going to be on an altar? Add milk to your altar and then what? Leave it? It's like, absolutely not. Because, one of the things is like milk and honey and all of that. Okay, please don't put milk out there. I said put wine and honey and myrrh and rose because those are things more associated still with the ancient times in Egypt, but they're not going to rot on your altar, which is a lot better. Yeah. Anything that reminds you of mothers, caregivers, ancestral women, your life force, anything renewal or rebirth, like make it personal for you, whatever that means, when creating an altar towards a deity that you would like to work with or receive sign from. So in my head, I was like, I'd put feathers on there. Like that would just be my own little spin on it because she has
wings.
Yeah. She turns into a bird. I like that.
For sure. Yeah. So the last ritual is sacred storytelling.
This is a new kind of thing I've never told you guys to do before or asked you to do, I guess.
So this is for reclaiming your voice and rewriting your narrative. Write a myth about yourself, about your life. Tell it like you're a goddess in an epic tale. Instead of the trauma, oh, these terrible things happen to me, speak of them as trials.
Yeah.
Instead of failure, speak of it as transformation. Begin with, there once was a sacred woman named, insert name, who rose from sorrow and called her power home. Read it aloud under the new or full moon. Burn or bury the paper as an offering to Isis. I really like that. And Jamie actually wrote a myth.
I did.
About Jamie.
Myself. Jamie wrote a myth about Jamie.
Jamie wrote a myth about Jamie. Kat didn't write one yet.
Well, because I didn't give Kat an opportunity to. She might have. But I wanted to give you guys an example. And I thought if I'm going to ask you to do it, I might as well do it. And you should hear the story that I wrote about myself. And I wanted to challenge myself. Because I've never wrote a myth about myself to not say what actually happened. My Virgo side is like, I write down every detail of the actual thing that happened. So to speak about it in terms of a myth was really a challenge for me. It was more like poetry. And I had to remember in mythology how things went about. So I can't say it's my best work ever. I didn't tweak it a lot. I just wrote it from that moment. And Kat's going to read it to you because I think I might be, I don't know if I'm embarrassed or shy. I'm afraid I'll giggle or stutter. I don't know if I read my own story.
The myth of Jamie.
The myth of Jamie.
In a time not long ago, a child was born. She wasn't born in a castle and didn't belong to a prophecy, but she was born with wild roots and moonlight in her soul. Her mother named her Jamie. As many women in her day, the world told her to be nice, sit like a lady, and be a good girl. The world expected her to stay quiet and to play small, but the fire inside her said, no, I am meant to be more. She battled against rooms filled with important men. She spoke up when asked not to. She turned down romance to keep her freedom. She traveled for many years from country to island, to countryside, looking for where she belonged. She wandered through heartache and shadow, loneliness and doubt, forgetting her magic for a time. Feeling beaten and broken by the cruelness of the world, she closed herself off so pain couldn't touch her. But one night, long after a long year and the loss of a father, she heard the goddess whisper, you are meant for more. Your sisters are waiting. And just like that, she remembered. She was never broken, just buried. She rose like a storm-fed ocean, gathered her grief, faced her fears, and began again, truer to herself than she had ever been. No longer would she stay quiet and shut down. She could feel her magic surging through her fingertips. She set out to become who she knew she was all along. Through the years of casting spells, using her wisdom, and following her passion, she looked around to see other women were rising too. Now she's a guide, a teacher, a witch who reminds others, even in the darkest soil, the wildest things can grow.
You should narrate books. You did that so well.
I really love that. Almost makes me like choke up and get emotional. That's such a great. I mean, when I think about, I know her whole story, obviously, because I'm her mother. So I know when she's talking about in this like mythological way, in line with the myth, how you would write a myth. Yeah. I know some of these trials and tribulations. You know, this battled a room filled with important men. I know exactly what that story is about for her. So to hear it, expressed like this, it's traveling, for many years from country to country. She did that too.
I did. It's all real. It's
all real. Yeah. So I just think it's a wonderful way to reframe, reframe your tragic story. Cause we all have tragedies, some of us more than others, but we've all got terrible things that have happened to us. I mean, probably a list of them. And, if you can write it in this format, it I feel like it makes you more powerful. Makes you feel more powerful. Like those things were not just bad things that happened to you. Those were things that helped you grow into who you are and changed you. And at the time when they were like really, really hard and it was devastating to go through some of these situations, when you got out on the other side of it and years later, you could look back and say that experience made me who I am. It made me understand how strong I am, what I'm really capable of. I didn't know I was capable of so much before I was able to endure whatever hardships it was. Yeah. So just reframing the story, I think it's really beautiful. I love this. And I know you did that I know you had to write that on your own because you really,
nothing can help me write it.
Yeah. There's nothing to help you write it. You got to think of your story but frame it in a way where you're not saying, and when I was 3, my mother left me and didn't come back, stuff like that.
That was difficult. It was hard to put it in a mythical thing. But after I read it, I was like, wow, like you said, I reread it and I'm like, man, I can see all of my stories in there. And yet I'm saying so very little, because we don't want you guys to write, like, it's not homework of pages and pages worth of writing, but like, how would you just tell your story? And then coming out on the other side, that is actually when I got to the turning point of how did I come out on the other side? I'm like, I don't fucking know how I came out on the other side. Like, how did that happen?
Like I said, when we're going through these things and they're just really hard and you think this is never going to end and my life is always going to be like this. And then eventually, of course, nothing ever stays the same because we're in motion constantly.
Well,
and so when you get on the other side of it and you're looking back, you can go like, wow, I made it through that. I am fierce. For me to get through that, I know I'm fierce.
I know how strong I am.
Yeah.
Well, I think that to have the turning point, because it's supposed to be like, in the write a myth about yourself, it's like, instead of your failures, speak of the transformation. And it's like, I had to not just forget my magic, I had to leave it alone for a while because I put so much energy into just surviving. I didn't have any time for my magic, for me, for loving myself like this podcast is inviting you to do, to really spend time with your inner emotions. So my hard part was like, when did it change for me where I was like, fuck this, no more. This is it. Like, I'm not going back to that person where I really did shut myself off from the world, you guys. Like, I refused to have friends because I'd just been hurt too many times by too many things. I was like, fuck it. Life is better alone.
Screw you over enough. You're just like, fuck people.
I was like, people are awful.
They're awful, and I don't need them. And every time I think I can trust somebody, they prove me wrong. And
I would say these things to myself. So I started to believe my own bullshit. And that wasn't true, because then the goddess whispering to me is really about when I would be in my totally own vibe and I'd be out on my own. You know, my kid was like at school or in daycare or whatever. And I would have my moments alone, and I would go into a crystal shop and I would make a connection there very briefly. But somebody would ask me something like, you know, I used to get this question on the street. I love all your jewelry. Are you a witch? And I'd be like, I didn't used to say yes. I just be like, oh, I would just like move on. Like, no, I don't want to talk about this. I started saying yes. Like, you know what? You have so much that you and like do that thing. And when 5 years ago, that was I was like, you know what? I wanted to help her more, and I didn't have the time and space. And I feel like sometimes, obviously, I don't think that I could have prevented anything. People's paths are what they are. But I just thought, like, if I had been more involved in her magic and in her journey, could it have gotten better for her? Could she have gotten to a place where she did find help and like really loved herself?
She committed suicide, right?
It is unknown.
Oh.
She died in her bed. Like,
so I thought she committed suicide.
Well, that's why I asked, like, no drinks and stuff like that. She possibly had a drug problem, alcohol problem, had a weak heart, had already had surgeries, you know, knew she shouldn't. And life was just beating her down, and she had nobody to turn to, and her family and her weren't close, and there were just all these things around it. And I was one of the few people, like, I never met anybody in her circle. Her and I had our own secret relationship because she felt like witchcraft was for her, spiritualism was for her, like being connected, because what she was born into was not giving her what she needed. It wasn't the relationship. It wasn't the belief in herself, you know? And we did that for a couple of years. We would meet up, we would hang out. I mean, and I just knew that, like, when everything happened, I was like, fuck, you know what? That was an opportunity, and I'm not gonna waste what I know, what I have, my like what I believe I am, which has always been a teacher. Like, when I was young, my mom used to, like, I was always going to be a teacher. I went to college, I was going to be a professor. Like, that was the thing. And now I know it wasn't to teach psychology, it was to teach witchcraft. So like, that was the goddess calling me back to my purpose. And there's many players in the game that helped me believe in myself to do that. And yeah, so that was the whisper in the ear, like, yeah, your sisters are waiting. So writing that made me emotional. Is like, all of the witches that I know, that's how I feel. It's like, witch sisters, all of us, we need each other. We need this circle. We need the empowerment of one another to want each other to do well, just for the sake of you doing well, not because anything else. It's like, nope, I want you all to rise and succeed and be the best versions of yourself that you want to be.
Well, to remember
who
you are.
Remember our fucking power. Like, that's something that's so important to me.
Yeah.
Life really does beat us down. I mean, it happened to me. I had to refine my power. I had to let people in and trust again and know that I was strong enough to walk away if they did fuck me over. Like, instead of hiding from it all, is like, I had to face it so that I could practice that, you know, the healthy boundary setting and knowing when people are not good for me and all of that. And yeah, reclaiming that. And because hiding away in my house was not having power. It was me avoiding everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so stepping back out was like, ooh, as scary as it was. Yeah, I'm glad I'm here. And I'm glad all of you are here now with me. And you can be witness to what I've gone through. And if it helps you on your own journey, is all I truly want for anybody. Is like sharing my story. If that can help one single person on their journey to finding themselves, to healing, to doing anything, like, that is what I'm here for. That's
reclaiming your power.
Truly think my purpose
really
is.
Remembering that you really are a goddess. I mean, society has tried to keep women down for millennial, and or millennium, however way you say that. But so, you know, I feel like we're coming into this era now where women are like, fuck this shit.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to be just a wife.
Your box. Yeah. I'm not going to get in the fucking box.
I'm not just going to be a wife and a mother, you know, or I'm not going to be the one who's doing all of the work. I need, you know, and if we can't have that, I mean, if you're on social media and you follow any of the conversations that are going on, women are like, I'm done. I'm not just like women in my age group. They're like, yeah, I'm not dating ever again. I'll live with my cats and my plants and my garden and my friends, but,
because of unrealistic expectations people place on us of who we're supposed to be or not be, all the stereotypes, all of the labels, all the things. Yeah. I think
it's shocking to me when I think about, I was I was a teenager when women still weren't allowed to wear pants, like to school and stuff like that. So I was really young, actually, probably not a teenager yet, but there's a picture that I saw recently, 1969. It was from a 1969, like school auditorium image is what it was. And all the girls were in skirts or dresses and women were not, literally in 1969, women were not allowed to wear pants to school. I mean, that wasn't even that far. That wasn't even that long ago.
I know.
Like when you think about the things we've had to fight just to get, like basic stuff, like, man. Anyway,
and it's also new still.
The point is, I think that, life can really beat us down and make us forget, just how powerful we really are.
Yes.
But we can claim that back. We can listen to the whispers of the universe and spirit of our inner selves, our higher selves. We can listen to that when we quiet our mind and spend time alone and think about things. We can hear that and we can claim it.
And that's what Cancer season definitely invites us to do, is to like sit with our inner self, to understand those inner emotions, to reconnect with it, if we've been avoiding it. Well, I just started to say this. Cancer season teaches us that vulnerability is strength. To be vulnerable, you have to have strength, because you can't be weak and be vulnerable. Like, it won't work. It'll crush you. And Isis shows us that love is the most important and powerful magic of all. And I do believe that. That's why I think a sisterhood is so important, because we love each other and we don't necessarily want anything from each other. Like when you're in a relationship with a partner, a man, whatever, there's like, they need you for this and you need them for that. But when you're a sisterhood, you all are just trying to boost each other up. You're just trying to support one another. I also
think, that love is the most important and powerful
magic.
Yeah. I think that spreads beyond just your sisterhood, friends, or your family. I think it goes out into the world too, because as much as hatefulness as there is in the world, I think if we can go out into the world with kindness and without the hate that, it's so easy to get drawn into, that love can change, the love, the feeling of just, like caring about other people, having empathy for them, even if you don't love them, but you behave toward strangers in a kind and loving way. That's really, really powerful. That can change your life. That can change other people's lives.
Definitely changes other people's lives.
It changes other people's lives.
Yeah.
So whether you're healing old wounds, strengthening your intuition, or simply longing to feel more held by the universe, call on Isis. She's been lifting women through the tides of life for millennia. Until next time, witches, trust your tides, tend to your temple, and remember, the goddess lives in you.
Yes.
Bye, witches.
Bye, witches.